And we'll start with some of our Sunday showdowns. And if you like touchdowns, then Cowboys and Bills may be for you. Now, we got Dak Prescott, who leads the NFL in passing touchdowns. Josh Allen leads the league in touchdowns overall. But, Rank, who stands out to you in this matchup?
Well, what's interesting for me in this one is obviously CeeDee Lamb has been one of the best receivers in all of football. But did you know that his teammate, Jake Ferguson, actually leads the team in red zone targets and end zone targets this season? That's right. As a matter of fact, he's had the second most targets among tight ends over the last couple of weeks, and he is second on the team in receptions and receiving yards. The great thing about him is his consistency. 12-plus fantasy points in 5 of his last 7 games. I feel very confident starting Jake Ferguson this week.
On the other side, I think you have to stick with Stefon Diggs. I know it's been rough for him as of late. He hasn't been a top 50 wide receiver in 3 of the last 4 games, I believe it is. But this game is going to be so high scoring. The Cowboys have allowed the 4th most fantasy points per game to wide receivers in the last 2 weeks. And just when you start doubting your stars, that's when they go off and remind the world how good they are. I think Stefon Diggs does that this Sunday.
I also think you can start James Cook in this one. I know we've sort of avoided running backs where we can against the Cowboys, but since Joe Brady has taken over as the offensive coordinator, their usage of him, especially in the passing game, feels a lot more intentional. Now, he's running fewer routes, but he has a higher target per route run rate than he did earlier in the season. The pass-catching running back, getting focused usage in a good offense in a potentially high-scoring game. This feels like a good opportunity to have Cook in your lineup here. Moving on to the Ravens and the Jaguars. And look, the Ravens defense, very good. The Jaguars offense, they got Trevor Lawrence who's a little bit banged up this week. So, Rank, how are you looking at this one?
And there's some inconsistencies there, too. I know with Calvin Ridley over the last couple of weeks, he's found a little bit of success here and there as the offensive coordinator has moved him around. They put him in motion. They got him off the line of scrimmage because they found that whenever he was lined up in like one-on-one with a cornerback, he was having some trouble getting separation. This week against the Ravens, I'm a little wary of it because this is one of the most physical defenses in the league. And as a matter of fact, the Ravens have allowed the fewest touchdown passes to wide receivers on the year. So I'd be very careful about putting Calvin Ridley in your lineup.
Yeah, I agree with that. On the other side, I think Odell Beckham Jr. is a sleeper. He's been averaging 13.5 fantasy points per game in his last 5 games. He's coming off his best game of the season, and the Jaguars are in the top 4 in yards, touchdowns, and fantasy points allowed to wide receivers in the last month. Plus, it's a Sunday night football game, and Odell, he has a knack for coming up big in those games.
I think we're going to train our attention on Odell later in the show. Anyway, I'm saying you got a must-start Isaiah Likely this week against the Jaguars. It's been weird because tight ends against the Jags have been all or nothing. There have been 4 guys who've gone over 90 receiving yards in a game. Everybody else has been under 40. But Likely getting a lot larger target share, understandably, with Mark Andrews injured for the remainder of the season. So I'm willing to bank on Likely being on the higher end of that spectrum with the target volume he's going to get in the Baltimore passing game. Meanwhile, on to Jets and Dolphins. Now, last week, Zach Wilson kind of stole the show. He was the AFC Offensive Player of the Year. Do you think Gang Green keeps that going this week?
I think they have a really good opportunity, and regardless, I'm always starting Garrett Wilson. I know that Zach Wilson is not the ideal quarterback to have right there, but I feel very comfortable going with Garrett Wilson. As a matter of fact, his last touchdown pass in the last 11 games came against the Miami Dolphins, which shows you that despite the fact that it could be a tough matchup or anything like that, he is going to be the most targeted player in this Jets offense. He's always got an opportunity for an end zone score. It's kind of a disappointment because I really believe that Garrett Wilson was going to step up and be a top 5 wide receiver this season. Obviously, that didn't work out, part of it because of the injury to Aaron Rodgers. But I'm still starting Garrett Wilson each and every week.
Oh, by the way, I was a little too grandiose. He's Offensive Player of the Week for Zach Wilson this past week.
Hey, if Zach Wilson wins Offensive Player of the Year, something's gone terribly wrong. Tua Tagovailoa, I think you got to beware of him right now. 8 fantasy points against the Jets in Week 12, and I know it's different when he's playing at home than in the cold weather in New York, but the Jets have still allowed the 3rd fewest fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. Their O-line, the Dolphins, is very banged up. Tyreek Hill has not practiced this week and is very much so up in the air. I'm not sitting him for just anyone, but if you have another quarterback on your roster you like, I would get away from two of them.
I would definitely make sure you're in on Raheem Mostert this week, and this also applies for Devon Achane or anybody else in that Dolphins backfield. The Jets' pass defense is good. The Jets' run defense, not so much. They are ranked 28th against the run this year, giving up more than 130 rushing yards per game. And when these teams met back on Black Friday, Mostert went for 94 yards on the ground and a pair of touchdowns. I think another good game is in the works for Raheem. Raheem must start. That's what we were calling him, at least midway through the year this season. We got Andy Reid versus Bill Belichick when the Chiefs and Patriots meet up. Now, Patrick Mahomes has not looked like his normal superhuman self this year. Last week, whole lot of drama, whether or not people lined up properly, whether or not Hall of Fame plays were taken off the board. But, Rank, does that hangover carry over into next week, or this week, I guess I should say, for the Chiefs?
Oh, Belichick and Andy Reid. Can't wait till that's an AFC West matchup next year. But here's what I'm talking about Rashee Rice at the moment. Over the last couple of weeks, he's really started to establish himself as the go-to wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, he knows where to line up properly. He knows what routes to run. And what we've seen from over that time is 9+ targets and 7+ receptions in 3 consecutive games. He's had close to 30% of the target share during that time. And really, if this Chiefs team is going to be successful, just stop with the Kadarius Toney thing like that. Just stop trying to make that happen. Focus in on Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice, and you should get back on track.
Yeah, I think Rashee Rice is a good play. And look, start his quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. And I know since he's come into the league, this has been an obvious start. But a lot of you are asking if you could continue to start him in fantasy. And maybe if your other option is Brock Purdy or Matt Stafford, you could get away this week. But Mahomes and the Chiefs are angry, and they are going to take it out on the Patriots defense. The great ones always respond in a big way when you start doubting them, and Mahomes is as great as they come. I think he's going to go off this week.
Yeah, you're not sitting Mahomes for like Jake Browning. Let's just be honest here. You are starting Ezekiel Elliott, though, where you have him. He's got a Kansas City defense that's facing him that's been just so-so against the run so far this season. And this is a Patriots offense that has been a lot more run-heavy since about week 10. Not expecting Ramondre Stevenson again this week, and Zeke last week with no Ramondre. 91% of the snaps, 96% of the rushing attempts, and 8 targets as well. I think that this offense is going to lean heavily on Zeke once again here in week 15. Next up, we got the Cardinals and the 49ers down in the desert. We know the Niners have a plethora of playmakers, but Rank, there's a Cardinal maybe that you have your eye on here?
Yeah, I think one of the top players for the Arizona Cardinals, at least offensively, has been Trey McBride. And despite the tough matchup against the 49ers, I'm still going with him. I understand that you might look at the matchup and be like, I don't like this one. But what we do like is how involved McBride has been in this offense. 9+ targets in 4 of his last 6 games. The highest reception share amongst tight ends since week 8. You see that right there. He has averaged 16 points per game since week 2. So for me, at the tight end position, which is very volatile, is that right? Did I say that correct? I don't care. It doesn't matter. Volatile, whatever. Okay, Mr. Stump the Band, I get it. Start Trey McBride, though.
Yeah, Trey McBride is a must-start option for me this week. And speaking of must-starts, all of your 49ers offensive players. In the last 3 meetings against the Cardinals, they've outscored them 111-39. Deebo Samuel is on fire. Brandon Ayuk is so consistent and brings a high ceiling. Kittle brings so much upside for a tight end. MV Purdy got them for 21 in week 4, and CMC went off for nearly 50. You start all of them in what could be a huge game for the Niners offense.
You can probably get away from Ray McLeod this week, though. You can also...
So Kyle Juszczyk?
Maybe
starting?
Juszczyk might be in play. Who knows? Look, if you have other options besides James Conner, I would strongly consider them this week. When these teams played back in week 4, Conner was held to 52 rushing yards. Only 2 running backs this season have had more than 60 rushing yards, and nobody's hit 90 yards on the ground against the Niners. Plus, I have a feeling game script could be an issue. The Niners have just been bludgeoning opponents. That continues again this week. I don't see a lot of opportunities for the Cardinals to run the football. 5 and the Steelers at the 6. So we continue on with our Sunday showdowns. Saturday showdowns, actually.
Saturday showdowns.
Yeah, I know, right? This whole Saturday thing is throwing me off here. I got to get used to it. 3 games all on NFL Network. Texans sitting right outside the playoff picture. Let's get to some of these showdowns, though. You can catch them only on NFL Network and streaming on NFL Plus. Starting with the Vikings and the Bengals. Nick Mullins getting the nod over Josh Dobbs, so he's now the new starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. Justin Jefferson says he will play. Rank, do you believe that JJ can get it done?
You know, I'm going to assume so. I know that last week it was kind of a bummer that he returned from his injury and was out very quickly, but I'm still going to start Justin Jefferson this week because you have to look for teams that have something to play for. And believe it or not, the Minnesota Vikings are in the playoff race. So I truly believe that Justin Jefferson is a must start this week.
Yeah, if Justin Jefferson plays football, you play him in fantasy. On the other side, I think must start is Joe Mixon. 51 opportunities the last 2 weeks, 20-plus fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games. I know the Vikings are a tough matchup on paper, especially the last month. Brian Flores is doing an amazing job with that defense. I don't care, though. Joe Mixon has been so good, you just have to stick with him moving forward.
I'm going with Ty Chandler as a sleeper this week, and this is mostly a volume play. Alexander Mattison has been ruled out, so Chandler steps up as the RB1 this week for the Vikings. Minnesota's run the ball very well, 125 or more rushing yards in 4 of the last 5 games. Against Cincinnati's 24th ranked run defense, I think plenty of opportunities coming for Ty Chandler. Next up, we got Gardner Minshew against Mitchell Trubisky with the Steelers visiting the Colts in this one. Both teams feel sort of boom or bust in fantasy right now. Rank, anybody in particular you have your eye on?
Well, once Jonathan Taylor was ruled out for this one, it made a really easy decision to go with Zach Moss. Over the last couple of weeks, he has been getting so many opportunities. As a matter of fact, 15 red zone opportunities over the last 2 weeks. He was tackled inside the 5-yard line 9 times over the last 2 weeks, and recently he had a touchdown called back because of a holding penalty on Quentin Nelson. You just didn't hear about it because he didn't pout like some people.
Yeah,
I don't know how you make that call.
People keep jumping in my mentions like, you keep telling me to start Zach Moss. I did it again this week. On the other side, don't start any of your Steelers pass catchers if you can avoid it. They have 9 receiving touchdowns this year, the fewest in the league. No pass catcher on their team is in the top 25 in fantasy points at their position. Pickens going back to last year is unusable with Trubisky. Freiermuth has 1 good game. If you're starting anyone, it's Deontay Johnson, but even him, the Colts have been extremely stingy against the pass. I would try to avoid it.
So you're not starting the pass catchers, but you can start Najee Harris. This also applies to Jalen Warren, but the Colts have given up 19 rushing touchdowns. Only the Panthers have allowed more. And with Mitch Trubisky getting another start, I think the Steelers will be hesitant to put the game in his hands. I would imagine they want to be a little bit more run-heavy. They have generally been more run-heavy since Week 9 as an offense. One last game on Saturday. That is the Broncos and the Lions. Lions trying to bounce back to what they looked like earlier this year. Last few weeks have not been great for this Detroit team. Rank, you riding with Mr. Unlimited and the Broncos, or you going somewhere else?
Well, I would say that what we've seen out of the Lions is what you should expect. They beat one team with a winning record this season, and that was Week 1 against the Kansas City Chiefs. So I'm riding with Russell Wilson in this one. You can definitely throw against this team. The biggest vulnerability for the Lions defense is in the secondary. Russell Wilson, still one of the best deep ball throwers in the game. Great connection with Courtland Sutton. I'm riding with Russell Wilson.
I'm with you. I think he is a start this week, and I think you start his wide receiver 1 in Courtland Sutton. A touchdown in 10 games this season, just 1 game with fewer than 9 fantasy points. So the floor is very safe. The Lions have been in the top 4 in yards and touchdowns allowed to wide receivers since Week 10. And this could be a game where the Broncos are chasing points or need to put up points to keep up with that Lions offense. So I think Sutton is a must-start option this week.
I think Jared Goff is not a must-start option. In fact, I think you can sit Jared Goff if you have the opportunity. He scored fewer than 20 fantasy points in 6 of the last 7 games, fewer than 18 fantasy points in 5 of those games. And yeah, sure, maybe he's back indoors again, but still trying to shake off the frost from being outside last week in Chicago. The Broncos have been locking down on quarterbacks since Week 6. C.J. Stroud, the only one who's thrown for more than 250 yards. So chances are you have another option on your roster.